Well, good morning, everyone, and good afternoon if you're joining us for the East Coast. Thank you for joining us today on a very, very important topic, return to repayment. We will be speaking about all of the repayment options, the new repayment save that's going to be in effect. And so hopefully your students are ready, or your prior students, if they're going into repayment. I'm not, but it is something that is happening. So we have some really good information to share with you today. So we're going to allow a few minutes for everyone to come in. Thank you for joining us today. This webinar will be recorded. I will send it out to you as soon as it becomes available. We have a Q&A function as well that I will be monitoring. So if you have any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. I will also be monitoring the chat function. So if you want to make a comment or ask a question in the chat, I'll be monitoring that as well. So again, thank you and welcome. We do have people still coming in, so I'm just allow a couple more minutes. Oh, and one other thing, we will have a short survey after this webinar. If you would be so kindly to complete that survey, we would greatly appreciate it. We do use the feedback to help us develop, future webinars, or even also to, just make sure that we're giving you what you're wanting. So the feedback is very welcomed, and we thank you for completing those surveys for us. And as we have everybody coming in, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our great speakers today. They are our Trellis own. First, we have Melanie Odom. Melanie is an accredited financial counselor and has been working in the financial aid industry for most of her career. She has had a variety of roles in financial aid administration, loan servicing, and working one-on-one with college students and families, helping them understand and navigate the financial aid process and handling their finances. She has a bachelor's degree in business management from Texas State University. Thank you, Melanie, for agreeing to present on this webinar today.
Thank you, Teresa.
Yes. And next we have Beth Landrum. Beth has worked in higher education for several years, serving in various roles. The last 18 years, she has provided counseling on financial aid and college-going processes to students and their families with individual session and presentations. She helps students build their future by exploring their educational, personal, and financial goals. Thank you also, Beth, for agreeing to present today.
Thank you.
So I think we have quite a few people in the room, so I will go ahead and turn it over to you guys and go ahead and get started. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Teresa, for the introductions. And thanks again, everyone, for joining us today. We're going to jump right in to get started. Some of the things that we're going to be talking about today is just a general repayment update. We're also going to be talking about all the different repayment plans, of course, focusing on the new SAVE plan, and then the repayment tools that are available. So that way you'll know how to direct your borrowers and students to those tools. We will go over the Fresh Start program, and then talking about different ways is helping your students and thinking about your students just as a whole during this transition period. So we're first going to talk about the repayment updates, right? So of course, the first thing is loan repayment starts in October, right? So in the next week or so, we will have students starting to make payments. Now, one thing to remember is that the servicers will be sending these billing statements out at least 21 days before the payment due date. So of course, yes, some students will be starting payments in October, but there will be some that will be starting out later on throughout the year. And then of course, into 2024 as well. So just remembering that no later than 21 days will they get the notification that their first payment will be due. Also, for those that were on the income-driven repayment plans, the recertifications are going to be pushed out. We're going to talk about that in more detail later, just so you know how that transition period will be as well. But all of those IDR recertification plans are pushed out into the future as well. Now, most students, so those students that have been on auto debit, so maybe before the payment pause, they were already in repayment, and making those auto debit payments, these students will most likely have to go in and re-enroll into the auto pay before basically they go back into repayment. So the servicers will not restart these automatically. They will be contacting the students to confirm that they want to re-enroll in the auto pay. So it's basically having the students confirm that whatever bank account they had set up for auto pay or auto debit in the past is still the current information as of today. So that's kind of the main thing for those students that have automatically been making those payments, is hopefully they confirm that, so that way they continue going forward making those auto debit payments going in the future as well. Now, the other thing is the interest rates that started September, right? So payments will start October, but September 1st is when the interest resumed. So whatever the original interest rates were on when that loan was dispersed, it will go into that time. So even though we had a loan taken out for the 21-22 school year, those whatever interest rate was on the loan at that time, that will start as of September 1st. So students will start to see interest. If you have students that are in school, that unsubsidized loans will be starting to accrue interest on September 1st as well. Now, the department created with the on-ramp transition period. And so basically, this is for the more vulnerable borrowers, right? And they created this temporary on-ramp period to help borrowers return to repayment all the way through September 30th of 2024. They want these borrowers to successfully enter repayment and not have that much of an impact. So this on-ramp period basically protects borrowers from having a delinquency reported to their credit reporting agencies. So this prevents the worst consequences of missed payments, late, or any partial payments as well. Now, the thing to remember with this is that the payments, they are still due and interest will continue to accrue. So the department will not report them delinquent during the on-ramp period, but they don't control basically how the credit scoring companies basically factor that on the missed or delayed payments. But in general, if a student or a borrower missed payments, the loan is considered delinquent and it's basically reported as much. But the thing to remember has to do basically with that interest, right? So with the interest on that will still be adding. That's a big piece of that. Also, for these missed payments, they won't count towards any loan forgiveness. So if they are on an IDR, income-driven repayment plan, or public service, these missed payments will not. So we know, of course, during the payment pause, all of those payments, like no borrowers were making payments, those do not count, or those did count towards the IDR and loan forgiveness. But during this period, if borrowers miss payments, those do not count towards the IDR and the public service loan forgiveness programs as well. The on-ramp period basically applies to those loans that were eligible for the payment pause, and borrowers don't have to take any action to enroll in this program. So the only kind of negative effects that this could happen, of course, is interest that can build up, right? Because then that's going to be, their balance is going to be getting higher over time if they're missing multiple payments. So that's kind of a big impact for these potential borrowers. All right, so I'm going to turn it over to Beth so that way she can go over some of our repayment plans.
Thanks, Melanie. So there are two different types of repayment plans that are out there. There are the traditional and the income-driven. So we're going to do a high-level look at some of these plans, and we'll discuss more of the SAVE plan later on in our presentation. So for the traditional plan, there are three different types. There's the standard plan, and that's the least expensive option because compared to the other plans, you pay a lesser amount of interest throughout the plan, which lowers the total amount that you pay over that time. This plan is a 10-year standard repayment plan, so it pays you out in 10 years. The graduated plan allows you to make smaller payments in the beginning of your loan term, and then the payments gradually increase, usually every 2 years over the life of the loan. And that loan would be paid within that 10-year period also. The extended payment plan is available if you owe at least $30,000 or more in federal student loans. Under that plan, you'd be able to pay your loan period would be a 10 to 25 year payment plan, just depending on whether your payments are fixed or graduated. For the income-driven repayment plans, we have the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, or ICR, and it's for any direct loan borrower, and your monthly payments will be the lesser of 20% of your discretionary income. Any outstanding balance will be forgiven if haven't been repaid in full in 25 years. This plan, the Income Contingent Repayment Plan, is the only plan that will allow for Parent Plus loans to be included. The Income-Based Repayment Plan, or IBR, the student's repayment would either be between 10 or 15% of their discretionary income, just depending on when they received their first loan. And this has a loan forgiveness of somewhere between 20 to 25 years. So payee or pay, it is pay as you earn. And this plan, you have to be a new borrower on or after October 1st of 2007, and you must have your first loan dispersed after October 1st of 2011. The monthly payments on this plan are 10% of the discretionary income of the student, but never more than what you would pay in a 10-year standard repayment plan. And this balance could be forgiven if they haven't paid their loan in full in 20 years. The SAVE, or Saving on a Valuable Education Plan, we're going to talk about in a lot more detail, but it was formerly known as Repay. And you will automatically, like Melanie said just a minute ago, you're automatically enrolled in the SAVE plan if you were in Repay. So just give us a couple more slides and we'll be talking about that. And then I just want to mention there's one more it's called Income Sensitive Repayment Plan, and that is for FFEL borrowers only. So if you're a federal family educational borrower, that would work for them. So for recertification, we know that the earliest that you can recertify is March 1st of 2024. If you log into the dashboard on My 8 on the My 8 page, the certification date could be posted earlier than March 1st, and the Department of Education knows about this, and they're currently working on this to get this updated as soon as possible. If you were on an IDR plan before the payment pause, you'll remain on that plan when the repayment starts, unless you've changed plans. So if something has changed in your status or the student status, if your income has dropped or maybe the family size has changed, they can recertify early to get into that new repayment amount. So you want to maybe direct them to like the loan simulator where the students will be able to check out all the different repayment plans. And again, we're going to be talking about the loan simulator here in just a couple slides. For recertification, if your recertification date is between March 1st of 2024, it'll be pushed back a year. So for example, if your certification date is now listed as November 1st of 2023, your new recertification date would be November 1st of 2024. And I am going to turn it back over to Melanie for a couple more slides.
All right. So now the SAVE plan, of course, this is the new plan. Saving on a Valuable Education replaces the Repay plan. And basically this plan reduces or decreases monthly payments by increasing the income exemption to 225% of the poverty line. So this plan basically eliminates 100% of the remaining interest for subsidized and unsubsidized loans after the payment is made. So under this SAVE plan, if your calculated monthly payment doesn't cover all of the interest that accrues, the government will pay all of the interest that isn't covered by that particular monthly payment. Now, when it comes to spousal income, so this plan excludes spousal income for those who are married and filing separately. Now, the other part of the SAVE plan that's important, it has to do with the recertification. So, of course, as we mentioned multiple times, is that to get started on the SAVE plan, if they're already on the Repay, that automatically happens. But when it's time to recertify your income and family size by the specified annual deadline, if the student does not do that, by that deadline, the consequences will vary depending on the individual plan. So specifically under SAVE, if you don't recertify your income by the annual deadline, you'll be removed from the SAVE plan and then placed in an alternative repayment plan. And then under that alternative repayment plan, your monthly payment is not based on your income. Instead, your monthly payment will be based on the amount necessary to repay your loan in full by the earlier of either 10 years from the date that you began repayment on that alternative plan, or the ending date of 20 to 25 year for your SAVE plan repayment period. You may choose, the alternate repayment plan and repay under any of them. But the main thing with this is that students will have to recertify on this particular SAVE plan if they want to stay on that. Now, as of July 1st of this year, for the SAVE plan, unpaid interest on the loans won't be added on to the principal when you leave any of the IDR plans, except for the income-based repayment or IBR plan, and that's because capitalization is required by statute. Now, this SAVE plan in general calculates the monthly payment based on income and family size. So that's one of the things on here with SAVE. Now, of course, we talked about the 150% now to 225% of the poverty line. We'll go over kind of a couple examples of what that looks like. But as far as progress on this SAVE plan, currently, there's more than 4 million student loan borrowers that are enrolled in the SAVE plan, and that does include those that were automatically transitioned from the previous repay plan. So, of course, SAVE is the most affordable IDR plan ever, and the main benefits, of course, is basically trying to stop amortization of interest, right? Having an affordable payment plan for student borrowers, and hopefully decreasing the amount of default and delinquency on borrowers as well. So that's kind of the main purpose of this particular SAVE plan. Now, I want to talk a little bit about discretionary income and kind of how that all kind of plays in. Now, when it comes to the SAVE plan, again, we'll talk about that 225%, right? That's at the federal poverty level. And so when you're looking at the SAVE plan, if you are a borrower, let's say that has $32,800 per year or less of income, that means that you're roughly making maybe $15 an hour. Their monthly payment will be $0. If you make more than that, then you can save at least $1,000 per year compared to some of the other IDR plans. So another example, if you have a student borrower, if they owe $25,000 in student loans, and let's say they earn $38,000 a year in their annual income, under repay, their monthly payment amount would have been $134 each month. But now with SAVE, the monthly payment is $43 a month each month. So under repay, their monthly payment was $134. Now it's going to be $43 a month. So that's a huge difference when you're thinking about income and expenses for individual borrowers. In general, based on this change from repay to SAVE, from that $134 to that $43 monthly payment, that would be an annual savings of the borrower of $1,092. So definitely a big difference, and may especially be key as they're just now entering into repayment, starting to build that into their, spending plans or income and expenses as a whole, of starting, maybe on the lower end, and then hopefully be able to increase payments over time. But that's where you can see just kind of the big difference of what the repay plan offered compared to a much lower payment that the SAVE plan offers.
So let's talk about what type of loans are eligible for the SAVE plan. Well, the eligible loans are the direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans, your direct plus loans that are made to graduate or professional students, and direct consolidation loans that did not repay any type of plus loans made to parents. Loans that are ineligible for repayment under the SAVE plan are direct plus loans that are made to parents. Direct consolidated loans that have plus loans made to parents in that consolidation. And then the FFEL plus loans made to parents, the FFEL consolidated loans that had plus loans in them, and any current loan in default. These loans can be consolidated into direct lending. So like if you had FFEL sub and unsub loans, those loans could be consolidated into a federal direct consolidated loan. Also, federal family educational plus loans to the graduate and professional students could be consolidated. And any FFEL consolidation loans can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan if they didn't have any parent plus loans or federal Perkins loans. And if your loans are in default, you could qualify for a program called Fresh Start. And we're going to talk about that in just a couple of minutes. So let's talk about loan forgiveness. So right now, only direct loans borrowers are eligible, and FFEL loan borrowers would have to consolidate, like we just talked about, in order to be enrolled in this SAVE program. So with a SAVE program, forgiveness is after 24 years, or on this combination plan for undergraduate loans only, and 25 years for those loans that have graduate loans or any other types of loans in them. 10 years if the original principal balance was $12,000 or less on total of all loans instead of your normal 20 to 25 years. And 1 year could be added for every $1,000 over $12,000. So an example of that would be is if the student had borrowed $14,000 total, it would take them 12 years of payments before their balance would be forgiven. So that will be a big difference in the amount of years that the student would have to pay. This plan still does cap the number of years to forgiveness at 20 years for undergraduate and 25 for graduate debt. The Department of Education is going to launch more communication campaigns to continually introduce this SAVE plan to borrowers as they re-enter repayment following the payment pause. So information is going to be tailored to borrowers who can benefit these plans. And then we know there are going to be changes coming in 2024. And one of the big changes that's going to be coming is that borrowers with undergraduate degrees will have to wait until next year to see their payments cut from the 10% that they're eligible for to 5% of their income above 225% of the poverty line. Or there'll be a weighted average between 5% and 10% for those students who also have loans that are graduate loans. So there are some new things coming next year.
Right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, of course, applying, right? So the online IDR plan request is where borrowers can go to apply for SAVE or any of the other IDR plans, which is Pay, IBR, and ICR. Basically, a benefit is that if the borrowers provide consent for the Department of Ed to use their IRS tax information, it will eliminate the need to apply each year. You know, in the past, that each year students had to provide their tax information and tax returns and things like that. This allows them to consent, give that permission, so the Department of Ed can already pull their tax information. Now, if there are borrowers that only have FFEL loans, then those borrowers will have to continue to use this online IDR plan request, but they will not be able to provide the consent necessary to use their IRS tax information, and they will be asked to provide income documentation of their servicer. But direct loan borrowers will be able to do that. Now, borrowers in general can use this IDR plan request in order to apply or recertify their participation in the IDR plan. And also if they want to switch. So if they want to switch from one IDR plan to another, this is another place where they can go and do that. Now, the other thing with this IDR plan is that they'll be able to request the recalculation of their monthly payment that's due based on any change in any of their circumstances as well. So this is especially specific to those borrowers that were already in repayment on an IDR plan before the payment pause started, but they know their income is lower as of today, or something like that, and their situation has changed. They can come out here and adjust that and select a new plan and view that here as well. So this is definitely, a new process. But the benefit, of course, if you give consent, then that recertification for the IDR plans makes it a lot more seamless year by year for individual borrowers. Now, the next thing we're going to talk about are the repayment tools. Now, with the repayment tools, basically, the thing that you want to know about is where to direct borrowers, right? And these are basically the tools that borrowers should become familiar with. The dashboard. So the dashboard is where borrowers can see their loan debts. We're going to look at that here in a minute, but they can find their loan servicer, right? So, of course, when we're thinking about different students, do they know their loan servicer? So current students, right? Are they aware that loan servicers have changed? Even prior students, that's a big thing there. They go to the dashboard, they can see who their current servicer is as well. The loan simulator, that's the tool where they can see what their monthly payment will be and simulate different situations, right? Maybe they have one income right now, but maybe they're going to have a different income later on. Maybe they're in school and they're kind of predicting when I graduate, this is what my estimated income would be based on my major, things like that. Also, the servicer's website. So, of course, through the dashboard, you can link to the servicer, and we'll show that here as well. So just to kind of know, like the dashboard, this is just a screenshot where you can see exactly what that dashboard looks like. So you as a faculty or staff member, you're aware of what that looks like. So when you're directing the students, you go to the dashboard, you could see your servicer and see the data that they need in order to successfully transition into repayment. So if they have grants and loans, then they will have two pie charts on there with how much they've had in grants and how much they've had in loans. It will also show what their payment due date is and who their servicer is, and that is key. Also on here, it will show, as far as the interest, right? And that's especially specific, for students that are in school right now. But the main thing is at least being familiar with this dashboard, what it looks like, and directing borrowers there as well, because there's lots of key components. So as they go in, they can see who that servicer is and directly linked to their servicer's website as well, which is a completely different login information. So of course they use their FSA ID to log into the dashboard. And then when they go to their servicer's website, that would be a different login as well. Now, as we're looking on here, the other thing to remember is servicer changes, right? Many servicers have changed during the pandemic. And that's one thing, that sometimes is confusing borrowers, or borrowers have a lot of questions on as well. And so this will have the most up-to-date information. Now, the loan simulator is another borrower tool, right? And so now the benefit with this is the loan simulator has been updated to include all the new changes to the IDR programs. The SAVE program is already integrated into the loan simulator. And basically what this loan simulator does is it enables borrowers to compare their monthly payment under the repayment plans that that's available to them based on their loan types, their balances, their income, and their family size. So as they go through the loan simulator, they can select what they're trying to do, right? If it's trying to find the best repayment strategy, or maybe they're trying to lower their monthly payment, or they just want to simulate borrowing over time, like what will happen over time as well. That's what they can use the loan simulator for. And as they go through it, you will see that it's going to ask them what their income is, what their family size is. It will also ask them if they're wanting to benefit from public service loan forgiveness, because of course, one of those, in order to truly benefit, is that you have to be on the income-driven repayment plans. And so it'll ask them if they're trying to benefit from that, or maybe this is a student that's maybe a senior and they know when they graduate that they are going to enter, into the public service field. So they can go and simulate that, and see what would be the best repayment option to look into, so they can prepare for that monthly payment that will happen after they graduate, or for those students that have already been in repayment at the same time. So as they go through and put in all of their situation, income, family size, so on and so forth, then it's going to show exactly what that looks like, right? So as they go through, it's going to show them based on your income, based on your family size, your student loan debt, the types of loans you have. Under each plan, this is what the monthly payment amount will be. So it's going to say under whatever payment plans they qualify for, it will show that. This one example here is showing save, right? But if you look at the bottom, you can also view and compare all the different plans. So if you're viewing and comparing the plans, then you can see what your monthly payment will be under save, or it will show if you qualify for IVR, what that monthly payment plan would be. And then you can compare them and see the pros and cons of each of the repayment plans that are available. If you did indicate public service, it will show that public service amount benefit, or the amount that you could benefit under the public service loan forgiveness program. So it's a great tool to navigate through, have borrowers use that based on current situation or future situations, if they're trying to repay, plan for repayment in the future as well. They can also directly link over to apply for any of the plans that come up if it shows that they are eligible for that particular plan. So it's a great tool to use, and in order, for borrowers to become familiar with as well.
So we mentioned the Fresh Start plan a couple slides ago, and the Fresh Start plan gives borrowers in default the opportunity to return into good standing. And it's available to all borrowers in default, right? So the Department of Education allows for this one-time temporary program to help benefit students with those defaulted student loans. The Fresh Start automatically gives the students benefits like restoring access to their federal student aid, such as student loans and grants. They do need to act to claim the benefits of Fresh Start, and that will help them get out of default. So there are different ways they can apply to the Fresh Start program. So you can actually go out to myeddebt.ed.gov to go ahead and apply for that. If your loans are in default with a default resolution group, their number is listed here, the 800-621-3115. They also have a deaf or hard of hearing telephone number there. And if you're with a guarantee agency and not with the federal direct loans, but maybe a different guarantee agency, you would go to that guarantee agency's contact information. And we were just looking at on the dashboard page where you can find that information out. Also, you can write to the Department of Education at their Greenville address. And in your letter, you have to include your name, your social security number, your date of birth, and that you would like to use a Fresh Start program to bring your loans back into good standing. So you have to state that you want to do that. Students can apply for the Fresh Start program if they have defaulted loans in the Federal Direct Program, in the Federal Family Educational Loan Program, or the FEL program, Perkins loans held by the Department of Ed. Borrowers who have Perkins loans that are held by post-secondary institutions and or HEAL loans are not going to be eligible for Fresh Start. So what does Fresh Start do for borrowers? So some benefits of that are it gives you access to your Title IV eligibility again. It also helps with your credit reporting. So starting February of 2023, you would no longer be reported as in collections with credit bureaus like Experian, TransUnion, and Equifax. And this is going to help your credit score. So you'll be eligible for the aid again. You'll be eligible for government student loans. Your credit reporting will look a lot better. Any collections that were going on will be stopped. You're going to have access to those income-driven repayment plans that you haven't had access to in the past, and you're going to have access to deferments and forbearances. Also, you'll have the possibility of being in the loan forgiveness programs like teacher loan forgiveness and public service loan forgiveness. If you use Fresh Start to get out of default, here's kind of what's going to happen. Your defaulted loans are going to be transferred out of default resolution group or your guarantee agency to your new loan servicer. And you'll have your defaulted student loan status turned into a repayment status. And they're going to remove records of default from your credit reports. So when you get out of default, you're going to want to go out there and have the students check out the different types of payment plans to repay their loans. And we find right now that most students who use the Fresh Start program use an income-driven repayment plan.
All right. So the next thing we're going to talk about is student populations, right? And this is a good point to kind of think about all the students that have entered into repayment, because there might be different needs for each of those different groups. So we have the first group of those that are currently in school. So those that are currently in school, they've never been in repayment. So their whole repayment pause, if they're brand new or just started, the first time since the pandemic or March of 2020, they've never been in repayment. They've always been a full-time student. So repayment is probably not even on top of mind, and they've never been their payment has never been postponed, right? But what will be different for these students, of course, is going to be the interest changes. So that's one impact that will appear for them. So any of those students that have had unsubsidized loans, maybe that started in the 2021 school year, and up to current, who've had unsubsidized loans, right? If they log in, that balance is still the same amount. So if they took out $4,000 in unsubsidized loans for the 2021 school year, and they log in and look at that loan today, it's still $4,000. But as of September 1st, we know interest kicks in for those unsubsidized loans going forward. So that will be a change for those students, is that they might, not necessarily pay attention or see that is a difference, but it's good for them to be aware that interest is now accruing on those loans. So that's a big portion there. And making them aware if they are able to make interest payments, that's a great scenario. That's a great option for them as well, if they have the capacity to do that. The other thing is thinking about past students or alumni who are previously making payments, right? So those that were maybe in auto pay, right, or auto debit at that point. So making sure that they're aware it's not just going to go right back into auto pay. They have to take steps and confirm that with their servicer in order to continue doing that, making sure their bank account information is updated. And also, as we mentioned several times, is the servicer transitions, right? So if they were even, maybe making payments or on IDR under one, that has changed. So of course, we know even more recently in summer of 2023, borrowers have transitioned from OSLA to AidVantage. We've also had borrowers change from Great Lakes to Nelnet. So those are even the more, recent ones that those transitions have completely been completed over the summer, over the last few months in the summertime. So that's the big thing, if those borrowers were used to going to their servicer, maybe to do recertification of IDR, maybe they were familiar with that, but now it's just reaching out to a new company. So making sure that they know how to go and view that information and reapply for IDR. Or if they were impacted, if they're not able to make that payment that was maybe on the IBR plan, then looking at the alternative repayment plan, then navigating through the SAVE program that would offer them a potential lower monthly payment as well. So that's where you have those groups of students. Also, those that were, let's say, not necessarily making payments, but in repayment on their student loan. So maybe they were entering in repayment at the end of 2019, right? And they were maybe delinquent or just entering in 2020, and then payments were postponed, right? So that's a big piece of that. Maybe they just entered into repayment, but never actually started making a payment. It's almost like starting fresh, starting new for them. So they've never done an IDR application or even started making a payment as well. So it's just thinking about, the mindset of those students, where they are, what have they done, and what do they need to continue to do in order to successfully start repayment, which is the end goal. Then you're also going to have those past students, so whether they're stopped out students or graduates who never started making payments at all during their loan. So maybe they stopped out during the payment pause, or they graduated during the payment pause. Their grace period has already gone through, and they've never even thought of that student loan payment because they knew they didn't have to make it, right? So these students, of course, servicer on all of these groups of students is going to be key, right? Making sure that they know, so that way they know where to reach out, they know where to log in to make a payment, view their status, view changes to their loan balance now that interest is accruing, or know to see those payment options. But those that have never started repaying their loans, a big part of that is integrating that in, right? At this point of, okay, what are my options? They might have never even looked to see, if they've graduated, maybe they never looked to see, okay, based on how much do I even owe? Hopefully they did exit counseling, and did that and were able to see what their balance is for at least that point in time. But that exit counseling might have been a year ago, or it might have been 2 years ago, just because we've been in that payment pause for a while. So, a big kind of piece of that is basically knowing what groups of students you have or that have been impacted, and what the need is for those particular students. Now, as we go through, right, the things that you can do. So, of course, outreach and awareness. So reaching out to those students to make them aware about repayment, right? If you're using a third-party servicer, then you can use them to help you reach out to those students. And the big thing along with this is staff education and training, right? So if you don't know, if your staff, if you're someone, faculty or staff, and you don't know all the ins and outs of every single repayment plan that is out there, at least knowing, what the different options are, and knowing where to direct borrowers, right, to those tools. So if you don't know, I don't know, I might not be able to calculate what your monthly payment is, but hey, go out to the dashboard, go out to the loan simulator. That way you know who your servicer is, and go and see what that monthly payment is, and see if that's something that you can afford. So education is going to be key, as far as faculty and staff, because students are, they have a lot of questions. Even it's ones that have been in repayment or ones that are new, they're having a lot of questions about what's going on, right? And so that's the big key from there. Now, regarding forgiveness and discharge programs, at least being familiar with that, whether it's public service loan forgiveness, teacher loan forgiveness, at least being familiar with those particular programs. So if students do come out to reach for questions, then you can direct them on there as well. And so that's really the big thing from there, is that, of course, there's lots of different, insights of how each repayment plan calculates the monthly payment. And that may be hard to keep up with over time. But the big thing is being able to make sure that your students know where to find that information, or if they're there, directing them to that information as well. Now, the other thing, especially like maybe even students that are in school right now, they're probably receiving correspondence from their loan servicer and not even putting those two pieces together, that is their loan servicer. As they get it, they might be marking it as spam or deleting it. But if even those students that are in school log out to the dashboard and see my servicer, is Nelnet. So now if they're getting an email, they can relate and put those two pieces together, that this is about my student loan. I might need to look at that, because there is correspondence going out to students as well. Of course, course, with monthly payments, the budget, right? That's a big key piece of that, is having students build this into this budget that they haven't had to do over the last 3 years. So anything related to money, finance, and getting them to, try to put money aside to make that payment, looking to see what my payment is, what I can afford, and fitting that back into their budget at the same time. Remember, the auto debit saves borrowers, 0.25% if they're making those payments on time. So it's another kind of a route for them, and also allows them to make payments on time if they're able to. So those are just some things that you can do for students as far as notifying them of these things as well. And if you don't know all the ins and outs, it's at least being able to, to direct them to the right place. So that's what I would say as far as overall communication with your students as a whole. Now we're going to go over, I know we had some questions in the chat about some of the websites and things like that. So I'm going to turn it to Beth so that way she can go over the resources as a whole. Now the dashboard specifically, that one is just studentaid.gov. Like when any student logs in with their FSA ID, it will take them right to that dashboard on that screen we showed earlier with the two pie charts, right? And then that's where they can see that on there as well. So that's just sometimes, they see it, but not really knowing all the pieces on there. So if you're at least familiar, then you can say, hey, this is where you can view your servicer, link to your servicer's website here. This is where, if you want to see the interest rate on your loan, that will show on the dashboard, and they can click on it and then view what the interest rate is on their loan as well. So all of that has been updated with the current interest rates, all of that as well. So that's where kind of the one-stop shop for students to see that, but also being able to not only look at it, understand what that data shows to them as well.
Yes, yeah, definitely. Studentaid.gov is a one-stop shop, right? So you can get all different types of information there, including the dashboard, but then you have the loan simulator that's out there. So if you go to studentaid.gov/loan-simulator, it'll bring you to the loan simulator where the students can go in there and play with the different plans and see what one is best for them, what one suits them the best. Also, if you want to learn more about all the different types of repayment plans, you can also go to the studentaid.gov manage-loans repayment-plans, and it'll have a list of all the different types of repayment plans that we talked about, everything from your traditional to your income-driven repayment plans. The SAVE plan, because that one is out there and it's brand new, it has its own announcements out there. So here is a link to go to that specific plan and learn all about the nuances of this plan. And then there is an income-driven plan request form, and you can go to the studentaid.gov/IDR, and that will take you over there, and you can start your request at that point. Studentaid.gov will also tell you, if you go to the main page, there's a search feature if you wanted to learn about different things. Maybe you're going to get into a repayment plan and be in public service loan forgiveness. So you can type in public service loan forgiveness. So like Melanie said, it is a one-stop shop. It has a ton of information, not only for you, but for your students. So I want to kind of open it up and see if we have any other questions. We've had a couple come in through chat.
Yes, what a wonderful, wonderful webinar. Thank you. I know this is so much information. We do have this webinar recorded. So as I stated earlier, I will send this out as soon as it becomes available. But please do, if you have any questions while we have our two experts here, please send them in and we'll be happy to answer those questions for you.
I was going to say, I do see one in there about the loan servicer that best guide, that if the loan servicer would best guide them. And I would say yes, but I'd also say knowledge, right? And so having the student go out there and view those options even first for themselves, so they have a little insight about it what are some of the payment plans available to me using that loan servicer? So they're kind of building that own knowledge for themselves. So that way, when they call, at the same time, it's not like the first time they're potentially hearing from that. So yes, for sure, 100% going to the servicer will get them that information, but also building their own knowledge base as well. So then they see it first, they can read about it first, and then, they might call in and say, hey, this is what I'm looking at. Can you guide me a little bit further? I'm not really understanding everything that they're reading. It's at least there for some knowledge base, but maybe they can't interpret everything on their own, but at least they've seen it on their own first. So I'd say a little bit of both, right? Of servicer, but also gaining their own knowledge along the way. So it's not the first time that they've heard these terms on the phone with their servicer.
Yeah, the loan simulator, definitely go out there and hopefully they've looked at that and can take an idea of where they want to be, and then they can review it with their servicer.
Let's see.
Okay. Do you have any more questions? You guys are very welcome. Thank you for thanking us. Thank you for attending.
Trying to make sure we got, I think all of them are all the questions so far.
Yes.
I believe so.
I know there was one about the pause on the delinquency reporting.
During the payment pause?
Well, after the year, like, when they go into repayment the first year, if they're delinquent, it's not being reported to the credit bureaus.
Yeah. So,
and you may have already covered it.
So in general, like if you miss payments, like your loan is considered delinquent, it's reported to the credit reporting agencies. But during this period, the servicers, they're going to automatically apply a forbearance on the account. So for the periods that you missed. So even though you're delinquent, there's a forbearance basically that they're applying on that. So it's not delinquent at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. And that will go through September 30th of 2024.
Thank you, Melanie. Yes.
Sure.
Okay. Well,
it
looks like we're finishing up a little early. Please do take advantage of the survey. We would love to get your feedback. We will give you about 10 minutes back of your time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Beth and Melanie, do you have any last words before we end this call? I hate to end early if someone has some more questions, but let me know.
Yes, no, hopefully this information will send that out to you. So then the links, you'll have those as your kind of resource guide, that you can use, or send to other staff members that might get questions from students. Like we said, as we know, like keeping up, with all of the regulation changes and things like that sometimes can be complex, but it's the main thing of, at least having the tools to direct to students. So, even if you create this, even like the resources here for staff or something like that would kind of be a quick resource for others to utilize.
We did have one more question is asked. So does that mean anybody can qualify for the SAVE plan? You want to touch on that? Or is it based on income?
It's both. Do you want to elaborate, Beth, or do you want go ahead?
Go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say it does. So not every borrower, right? Because it also depends on the type of loan that they have. So of course the loan type does have a factor, and then income does have a factor as well. So they will take their income as well as their family size, and then using that 225% of the poverty line to determine what their monthly payment would be. So yes, income comes into play, family size comes into play, but also the loan type comes into play as well.
And I think with them increasing that to 225%, more borrowers may qualify for this plan. But yes, it's still based on income and family size.
That's correct.
Yes.
The whole kind of key for that of this plan in general is to make it affordable for more individuals. So that's why it's that where repay was the 150%. And that's why you see that big jump from 150% of the poverty line to 225% of the poverty line. So now, higher incomes can still qualify for that as well.
Right. And then next year, right now the save is at 10%, but next year it should be cut in half to 5%, which will save students a lot of money during their repayment time.
There was another question asking, is there any type of verification done on the information provided by the student?
Do you mean by like their income information? If you mean by the income information, like if they're qualifying for IDR, okay, so the main part is yes. So when they go to apply for the IDR, if they're using that income-driven plan request that we highlighted earlier, they can give consent to the Department of Ed to pull their tax information. And if they don't, then yes, then they would have to provide that. Now, for the first 6 months, though, for return to repayment, it also will allow borrowers to self-certify their income and family size, but that's for the first 6-month period for that on the income-driven repayment plan request. Say that 5 times. IDR plan request for short. So yes.
Say it one time for me.
Exactly.
Okay, here's another one. Will the loan service recalculate the payment amount after July 2024 once the percentage changes from 10% to 5% automatically for borrowers who start the SAVE program this fall?
Yes. So when that change does happen, the students will see a lower repayment plan a lower repayment amount if they have a repayment amount, right? So if it was $100, they might see it go down to $50. So that should happen automatically.
You have some great questions. Okay. Well, looks like that's about it, I think. Not rushing.
Thanks everyone for joining us today, on this webinar.
Yes, thank you very much.
And like I said, we're all in this together. Student loans will go back into repayment and our lives will be back normal, I guess. I don't know if you want to say normal, but I will send the webinar out to you as soon as it's available, the recording. So thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day. And I'll give you about 3 minutes back. And if you will complete the survey, we will greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.